Hot Pockets, Scotch Tape, and the Dispensers. Hey, what is up ladies and gentlemen? Today's video is going to be somewhat different. I don't tend to make videos on this sort of stuff, but it just caught my attention that I just needed to talk about it. Now, I'm sitting there enjoying my comic book, The Amazing Spider-Man number 57. I get to the very end where they tend to post letters that fans sent them. Typically, the letters are very meat-righty, so I don't tend to read them. And if they're ever critical, Marvel Editorial gets rather defensive about it. So in general, I tend to stay away. But in this case, someone sent a letter that got published in this comic book that I felt needed to be talked about. So let's jump right into it. This letter was sent from a fan from New Zealand. They are very reasonable with their expectations on what they want from a comic book. Now let's get into the letter itself. It begins with, "Hi Nick and Zeb. With the release of issue 53, I feel that this arc is the perfect microcosm, a pure distillation of the problems with the creative direction and ideology behind Spider-Man ever since 2008. Peter has just turned evil for the third time in less than a year, the second time in only 4 issues, and all I'm left wondering is, haven't I already read this before? This arc? Hell, the whole run by Zeb feels like we're just going around and round in circles. And that feeling extends to nearly 500 issues prior to this moment as well. Nothing has really changed in Peter Parker's life. In all that time, he's still just as much of a broke loser who keeps pushing away the people around him as he was immediately following One More Day. All the while, everyone else in Marvel gets to grow and change. Hell, even Venom is a responsible father now. Why isn't Peter allowed to see any development of his own, like he had done for decades between 1962 and 2007? I speak for many millions of fans of Spider-Man when I say I'm disappointed with his creative direction, and it's why I'm so supremely happy with the new Ultimate Spider-Man book, because it feels like a true continuation of Stan, Steve, and John's ideals for the character and his growth. I really hope things will change soon, and do many others. Ever an underwhelmed fan, Nick from New Zealand." Now, ladies and gentlemen, that seems like a very reasonable response to just overall the past 500 issues that Marvel has put out. It seems like this gentleman from New Zealand has literally read every issue up until this point, and he definitely knows what he's talking about. Now, here's where we get to the juicy part, right? Let's get into how Marvel Editorial responded to this gentleman. "Hello fellow Nick, and thanks for writing in. Sorry ASM hasn't been doing it for you. As for Peter turning evil, it was part of an ongoing story thread we were working on that only seemed to end at ASM 35. If it didn't work for you, that's a bummer. It worked for us and a lot of fans. As to your bigger question, would Stan and Steve and John want Peter's life to develop? I'm not sure. And I can't speak for them. I certainly don't think they had a definite plan for such a development, as they had no way of knowing this book would last decades past their time on the book. I've come to think that Spider-Man growing, aging, and developing his life along with a reader in ASM isn't the way to go. I believe that Spider-Man belongs to all fans and all generations and should mostly be as universally relatable as possible. Why just mostly? Well, we should still do stories like Superior Spider-Man, Worldwide, and Beyond that drastically change Spidey, but then come home to the core of Spider-Man. That said, we at Marvel contain multitudes and have offered many stories of Spider-Man growing and aging beyond his archetype core, if that's more of your thing. I do think it's bold to claim that your view is one representing multiple millions of fans' viewpoint on how Amazing Spider-Man should work as a comic with no way to prove it, but you do you. Regardless, I'm really glad you're enjoying Ultimate Spider-Man. I love that book too. Jonathan and Marco and co are so good. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There you have a excellent good idea on what an actual Amazing Spider-Man comic reader fan thinks on the character. The gentleman expressed true concerns over the character just running in circles over and over for the past 500 issues, with no actual development in sight. And you can tell the guy totally read possibly every single issue up until this point, and they're simply just voicing genuine concern over how they're treating the character. But then you get responses from like Marvel Editorial where they hit you with stuff like that. It's like, what the heck? The gentleman brings up how Venom is more evolved, he's a responsible father, he has his own kid, even the Fantastic Four have their own kids. But Spider-Man is still a very stagnant character, he really hasn't evolved from how this gentleman was putting it from 2008. And all Marvel Editorial responded with, "Haha loser, your response means nothing, have fun enjoying Ultimate Spider-Man, we sure do." Like, what the heck kind of response is that? Their explanation is basically, once you do drastically change the character, you inevitably just have to bring him back to ground zero. Because apparently, that's how you appeal to everyone in the audience. Marvel Editorial even goes, "I do think it's bold to claim that your view is one representing multiple millions of fans' viewpoint on how Amazing Spider-Man is going, or how it should work." Ladies and gentlemen, I gotta say, I totally agree with the person that sent in that letter. I may not be the millions of people that Editorial thinks this guy's referring to, but I am one guy in the internet, which just happens to agree with what this guy who sent this letter in is saying. Unfortunately, the character is still stagnant, who knows if that's ever gonna change. Editorial does bring up how they have the stories like Superior, Beyond, and Ultimate to basically reason over the fact that, yeah, we got stories where Spider-Man is definitely very different, but he doesn't change at all in the Amazing Spider-Man comic run, which has been going since 1963. Once 2008 hit, they just said, F it, man, let's just keep him exactly the same as everyone knows Spider-Man to be, just a broke loser. Editorial is basically just telling you like, oh, if you want to read any sort of variant differences in the Spider-Man character, go read a spin-off title. Go read Ultimate Spider-Man. If you want him with the family, go read that. If you want him evil with Dr. Octopus controlling him, go read Superior. Instead of putting those stories in the Amazing Spider-Man to just continue Spider-Man's life in a very evolving way, nah, you're not gonna get it with the Amazing Spider-Man. I guess Editorial knows that people are gonna be buying the Amazing Spider-Man comic because of course it's the longest running Spider-Man comic out to date. So if they can bank on you buying the Amazing Spider-Man, they're gonna bank on you buying something remotely different on another spin-off comic. Why bank on one comic book that's $4.99, The Amazing Spider-Man, when they can sell you The Amazing Spider-Man at $4.99 and Ultimate Spider-Man at $5.99? There's two comic books right there that you're going to be buying anyways. Oh, and Superior Spider-Man, there's 3. Now, when you head to the comic book store, you're going to be buying 3 comics instead of just one singular comic. At the end of the day, it just seems like they're greedy and they're just trying to bank off these additional spin-off comics that evolve the character. Well, anyways, that is all I have for y'all, ladies and gentlemen. I don't tend to make videos on these meat writing letters that they sent to Marvel Editorial that they publish in the comics. But in this case, it was a very good representation on how they're treating the character and why they're treating the character that way. So I just had to let y'all know. If you enjoyed this video at any point, make sure to leave a like and subscribe, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace!